Well, Lilydale is the oldest spiritual. Started as a camp, literally a tent camp. You know, the Fox sisters were the famous first mediums. You know that. Is anybody there? Is it Mother? You know, rapping, table rapping, and levitating and stuff. That was around 1850 or 60, I think.
What about the tools of the trade of those times, from scrying to crystal balls to Ouija boards? What were some of your...
I can tell you all about Ouija boards.
Please.
Well, Ouija board is a cheap piece of masonite with a plastic printed label stuck on top of it with all the letters and everything on it. It's the extension of something that was called planchette by the French. You wrote the letters of the alphabet on the back side of a glass table or a piece of glass. Yes, no, oui, non, whatever in français. And then you had a piece of, they often used a wine glass with people put the fingers on either side of a wine glass, like a big French wine glass. And this thing began to go around. You say, is there anybody there? And it would go yes or no or whatever it was. And then it would spell out a name or something. It was very time consuming. And first of all, those wine glasses were empty because a lot of people have been drinking. So there's a lot of stories about this. People got contacts. The dog went under the table, started howling, a lot of weird stuff going on. And then the usual ending of the evening was pretty soon the messages got a little coarse and sexual, and and the Ouija board said something like "fuck you, you old bag" or something like that, and everybody screamed and ran out. I mean, the Romans and the early people took it very seriously because of that type of thing. This was like the Delphic Oracle. Mm. This is all divination, but this is basically automatic writing. You can do it with a pen. You can do it writing. Is there anybody? Yes, no. The most important thing, you have to know who you're talking to, and you have to know they have to sign in as they enter and sign out when they, so you know if you're getting 6 different spirits, you don't want it all mixed up on one.
Well, let's talk about that. The difference between a guide that's going to curse out someone through a Ouija board, a spirit, and a guide. So are there spirits that will speak that are not guides?
Oh, well, a guide is a category into which a spirit may come. Any spirit who is a regular spiritual force in your life is technically referred to as a guide.
Okay.
Now, there's different kinds of guides. There's pathfinders who show you the way to get through the woods. Mm-hmm. And there's guides who handle, interpersonal relationships. There's guides that are like doorkeepers, which is a guide. So all these different guides and things, there's a whole category of this.
What are the doorkeepers?
Doorkeeper is basically the bouncer.
So doorkeeper, gatekeeper, carding people, checking IDs.
You got it. That's exactly that.
Okay, and what are they looking for? What are they doing for the person channeling?
Well, I'll give you a good example. We had a group here one night. I only found out about it afterward. And I'm in trance, and somebody starts picking up picking a bone with whatever the spirit's, saying, well, I don't believe in that, or whatever it is. Suddenly, that spirit isn't speaking, and suddenly Bright Star's there. Bang, like that. You know what she says to the guy? I suggest if you have any negativity on this subject, you process it elsewhere. He left. It was a good way of saying, get the fuck out of here.
Wow, yeah.
They do that. In other words, they protect the medium from anybody messing with them. If you're not happy, it's time to leave.
She's the bouncer.
She's the bouncer. Yeah, she can be.
What was your first? Now, Bright Star is the spirit guide who is your bouncer, your gatekeeper, your doorkeeper.
She is.
How did you meet her?
Well, I met her actually through Agatha. That was the first connection with her. Mm-hmm. And actually, she appeared above me. I've actually seen Bright Star as a bright star who appeared in England at a very mysterious set of circumstances. when there were no stars to be seen in the sky, in a cloudy sky, and suddenly this star is there, like the star of Nazareth. And, I wondered, I have a guide who's been mine, who's a kind of a literary, not a kind of a literary guide, but has helped me with language. And his name is William Wordsworth. You may know the name.
Yes.
Okay. Famous English poet. Mystic. Who channeled a lot. By the way, he did not write his poems down. He walked back and forth pacing and speaking the words, and his wife and his daughter would write what he was saying. And he's the one that said, our birth is but a sleep, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, and this is star, this is like bright star, hath elsewhere a setting and cometh from afar. Not in utter nakedness nor in entire forgetfulness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God who is our home. This comes from a great poem called the Ode on the Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood. This is an old man recalling what he experienced as a young boy that convinced him that there was a God in heaven and that there was a force that surrounded us. And so then, after this weird appearance of this star, I came home and I said, was that really bright star? And a voice says, go take the Wordsworth poetry book. I have two of them. It says, take the blue one. So I took the blue one, okay. And said, open it. And when I opened it, the page I had actually come from France. And as Wordsworth had. And he had visited France just around the time of the French Revolution. He got the hell out of there because he could see how dangerous it was. And he writes two poems, each one referring to a star. Oh, my guiding star who guides me, who's brought me here away from danger, etc., etc.
Your guiding star.
Yeah.
And here's your guide, maybe.
Yeah, bright star. He says, oh, bright star who guideth me.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. He uses the term bright star. So one of his guys was bright star.
Maybe bright star was working with him as well.
Okay. Why not?
So Agatha, your teacher, let's talk about that for a moment. Why don't you mention her? And
she didn't really know what this was about. She did not have the history with that I had from knowing Wordsworth's works. But
what were classes with Agatha like? Where did they take place? Who else was
still at home? In her living room, which was darkened so that it was dark. They always worked in dark circles. I mean, they didn't work in brightly lit rooms.
Why is that?
Well, because this idea of physical phenomena would only take place. And in some of them, they had this horn, which was, they used what was called a trumpet. Well, a trumpet is nothing more than a megaphone that makes it sound louder so there can people hear. Otherwise, the spirit sounds like this. Yeah, the spirit face or something. And there's that's not going to work. And a lot of these mediums didn't know how to project their voices, which I did know how to do. So a lot of them got these trumpets, and apparently they were either picked up by the medium in trance or they were picked up and floated around the room. But anyway, they had to come this way to become a megaphone. So trumpet mediums were megaphone mediums.
Now, these trumpets or megaphones actually physically levitated in the air. There's many accounts of this.
Yes.
Because physical mediumship isn't as prominent or as known or experienced in this era as that.
One. Okay. So I would say the best story Giuseppina Palladino. She wasn't English. Giuseppina was a famous Italian trance medium who lived around the 1880s, 1890s, and English study of mediumships was very high at that time. They were very interested in the phenomenon. So they heard about the fact that she gave these amazing seances with music and all kinds of stuff, weird stuff that happened. So these English guys go, they look her up, they ask if they can come and sit in her seance. And sure enough, it was a real, like a circus. I mean, there was music, there were people talking on trumpets, there were tambourines, there were whatever it was.
You mean spirits were doing this? Or people?
Well, this is what they experienced. I'm talking about their experience.
Okay.
They said, looks like she's working with associates. Or maybe she's doing this stuff when her back is turned or something. So they said, Miss Palladino, would you mind terribly if we tied you to the chair when you're channeling? She said, no, it's fine.
So they actually bound the medium.
They tied her to the chair. They had an armchair.
And they did this because they believed that
she was fooling around.
Must be fooling around and faking this.
That night, same thing happened. She was tied to the chair, and the whole show went on. So they said, we have to check this room out very carefully, because there were like drapes and you know how they covered the things, windows and whatever. So she said, fine. So she went, they went around and they found tambourines and trumpets and whatever. I mean, they found all the stuff. And they said, well, there's no doors. There's no way into this room. They would have had to cross into the room in front of us. They would have had to, or been in the room already, but they weren't because we checked it out before we started. So now they come to Josephina. They say, now, Josephina, something very strange is going on here. It seems that there's somebody in this room playing these instruments and, making noises or whatever they're doing. I said, oh, yeah. She said, they said, did you put these instruments? She says, oh, yes. Oh, yeah. They asked me to. So they try to get to the bottom of this, and here's the story. She said people from all over Italy heard about these wonderful meetings with the spirits, and they come from all over. They spend a lot of money to come here, and I didn't want them to be disappointed. So I put all these things here for the spirits to play while we're having the group, so people could really believe that it was happening. She was an accessory to the crime, but she was not the criminal. The spirits really did it. The spirits really made the noises and did all the stuff while she was tied to a chair. She just was the, accessory. She provided all the tools. And her motive was just simply she didn't want anybody to go home disappointed.
You've seen so much in the psychic world, the channeling world, the mystical world. Share with us something that kind of blew your mind, where you went, this is a little crazy, well, no. Even by Alex Murray's standards.
No. My favorite one is the guy who used to bring through these women's dead husbands. Dark seance room. Suddenly, the husband materializes without any clothes on. And they began to make love. And so these women were like, beginning to make love with their dead husband. This was pretty cool.
Wait.
I'm serious. I mean, the dress comes off, or the
she's there. She appears what people would call a ghost.
Yeah, a ghost. Well, it ain't no ghost when they have coitus.
Right.
Okay, so anyway.
He appears in the room.
He appears in
other people are sitting there.
No, there's no other people, just the woman and the medium.
Okay.
Now, the medium is married. It was down at one of these spiritualist camps. I can't remember which one it was. That was Lilydale. Not Lilydale. It was one of these places. So one day, the wife gets a phone call from a woman who says, oh, I really want to come and see my husband. The wife is listening. She says, I want to come see. I want to be with my husband again. It was so lovely when your husband brought him through. And we made such, love or whatever it was. The wife goes, what is this I'm hearing? So she spied on him, and she found out the husband was just basically using the seance room as a whorehouse. And she said, I'm out of here, and you better be out of here before I call the cops on you.
Oh, my God.
That was a big scandal. But, I mean, I
thought you were going to tell me, well, this painting came off of the wall and flew around the room, and of course.
That kind of stuff is not
Oh, that's boring stuff.
That's boring stuff. I like the I like the juicy stuff.
What about those mediums, those physical mediums that we often see black and white photographs of, where there's ectoplasm or some physical manifestation?
Well, ectoplasm.
Share about that.
Well, ectoplasm is, first of all, you can manufacture it by having a smoking pot someplace that's sending off gassy things. I mean, you don't know what it is. It looks like smoke. And some of it, they used to say, used to congealed into the forms of people. But there were people who made psychic, what they call spirit photographs.
Yes.
Those were very manipulated. Actually, the most interesting person on all of that was Harry Houdini. Now, Harry Houdini, who was the master trickster, said that he could prove that any medium was a fake if he could reproduce whatever they produced in a seance room. And to a large degree, he could do it, but there was some stuff he couldn't reproduce. So there was an element of how much was reproducible by a trickster and how much of it was not. A lot of stage magicians use these techniques because Harry Houdini was a stage magician. I mean, he used to have people wrap him up in chains and throw him in the river, and he would manage to get out and do stuff like this. So he was pretty powerful. He himself must have had a lot of spiritual power, but he felt like he went on a crusade to get rid of fake mediums. And he wrote a book about it and all this kind of stuff. So he was pretty popular. And that was in the early 1900s. I don't know all the history, only because I know that there have been mediums who pretended to have a contact with the spirits who basically made the stuff up, and others who really had that contact. You take someone like J.Z. Knight, who had this is one of my favorites. J.Z. Knight, you remember who she was?
I know, she channels Ramtha.
Yeah. Well, Ramtha, first of all, started telling people that the end of the world was going to happen, and the only safe place to live was in Washington, where Jay-Z lived. And they needed to buy some property from Jay-Z because they was wanting to sell some property up there. And then they needed to buy some horses because they weren't going to be able to use cars. So she was in the horse business. So now they're selling horses. And then this, and then that, and then the other thing. And it turned out that Ramtha was just some kind of shill that was basically working for JC to make money for her. And when it was all discovered, it just blew up all over the place. I mean, she had people who thought she was channeling God. Well, Ramtha was no God. He was a hustler. And you have to say, why is the spirit telling you this? Are they some investment in the results? I have no investment in the results of whatever I tell people to do. They can take it or leave it. I mean, what I am probably best known for is the statement about predictions. I said predictions are nothing that mediums cause. We can't make things happen or not happen. Predictions which come true are good advice taken or warnings ignored. Nothing more and nothing less.
So what makes a clear channel?
One who doesn't get their personality in the way. I mean, I have no claim to... First of all, let's talk about fame. Fame is much more costly than it appears. Fame is one of the most expensive things you can ever get involved with, and it is the biggest bother in the world. You have no private life. People want to know everything about you. They want to know what kind of toilet paper you wipe your ass with, and the rest of this stuff is just...
Well, now social media, people, all these souls are on social media. They want you to know what kind of toilet paper they're using. They're putting cameras right in
the toilet paper company. They're being paid by that. That's a sponsored message.
And they want to do it.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
It's one of the oldest sayings. They always say, follow the money. You'll find out what's really going on.
Have you seen the messages? It's interesting because as the eras change, the decades change.
Yeah.
Though there are eternal truths that we discover, I do suspect and read, as I read channel material, that the messages all are also for the specific period of time we are in, to understand how we're creating things. So, for example, with social media being such a force in this world, does this reflect the need for people to be seen and heard, or to connect? That could have been for the when people were against the telephone, you know. And how do we see channeling? Where do you think that the mainstream of the world is going to start to pay more attention to channeling? Because they certainly are more now than they were before.
I believe so, but now I think for the right reasons. About pay attention. A lot of the stuff, well, first of all, channeled material is never for the past. It's only for the present and the future. You can do nothing about the past. Sure. You cannot fix the past. You can, and the idea of karma. Karma is what you have not done, should have done, or need to do. But it has to be done in this lifetime. The opposite of karma is something called merit. Like Boy Scouts, we used to get a little merit badge for everything you learned. So merit, and you achieve a certain number of merits for all the good things you do, and a certain amount of karma for the things you can't do. So somebody said, well, how can you, and how does karma work? I said, well, there was this man who was sang in the opera in Italy and wasn't very good. And he came out and sang this aria in this opera, and the audience went. And a voice says, ancora, which in Italian means do it again. So he sings it again. Really enthusiastic applause, right?
Right.
Ancora. He says, no, I can't do it again. We have to go on. He says, the voice says, we make you sing it till you get it right. That's karma. Karma at work. If you do something right, you move forward. If you don't do something right, or do something that you shouldn't have done, or didn't do what you ought to have, you step backwards. So it's like stepping backwards, you know, the 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. And a lot of people have that kind of a situation.
When you watch those mediums do these things where there was a lot of physical manifestation in the room, and then there are parts of you that was bored from, oh, we're fine here on the other side, the garden is growing. Did you sense that what was to come through you needed to be different? And
I knew it. I didn't sense it. I knew it.
And people needed to hear that also. Were you also kind of...
I basically said, I said, if this is what mediumship's about, I'm retired before I even start.
So where was the connection, the segue from that into, okay, I am connecting to information that I feel the people really need to hear, and then that would probably begin to separate you from from that community of mediums.
Well, absolutely, and that's what happened with me and David Diaz. I mean, he had this whole thing about making people's contacts and giving them messages they wanted to hear and everything. My purpose is to give people what Spirit wants to give them, not what I want to give them. I want to simply be an instrument that can be freely played by a Spirit who knows how to play it. A Spirit who is, adequately enlightened to say something worth listening to. And I don't prejudge it. I don't rehearse. I just sit down and I do it. So there's no, people say, what do you do before you channel? I said, well, make sure I've rested, make sure I use the bathroom, make sure I'm not hungry, and just basically relax and just let it happen. I don't have a routine.
Would you think that that's different than a lot of other mediums who have many rituals?
Well, I think a lot of people do. I mean, there's a lot of people who blow a lot of smoke around the room, just get rid of the evil spirits and stuff like. I don't think it'll help at the last minute. If they're there, they're there.
But you do have your own personal rituals.
Oh, I have my ritual. I gave somebody recently some advice. It said something about. I've actually called me this morning. She said she was in this place where she felt some negative forces. Well, first of all, traditionally we light a candle. Candle will push darkness away. Light bulbs don't work the same. I said you can have like a little votive candle in a jar sitting beside you, and that's going to keep negative forces from connecting with you. Mind you, I did study how witchcraft, voodoo, not what do you call it, macumba, and all. I went in South America. I had to know what I was getting into.
I see.
So I knew, and I knew what to do with candles. Candles are very powerful to push negativity away.
Do you find that working in different cultures, the messages that were come through were really designed for where those people
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because I wouldn't think you could tell people in New York City what you tell people in a small town.
The basic premises I find are very similar, but the way you say it.
Yes.
I mean, you can say, well, you gentlemen or you guys. I mean, you can put it in, pretty modern, hip talk. You don't have to talk in, the Queen's English. It doesn't necessary. I remember one guy says to me, "What you do say me?" Which means, what did you say to me?
Yeah.
I figured that out. I mean, the spirits understood. What you do say me. I mean, I could get that. So that it's not how perfectly you speak a language. I've channeled in various languages certain amounts, but I think it's good if you have. I work with a lot with translators.
Yes.
And I worked with translators always when I did channeling in France and Belgium. I had a wonderful translator. She's still alive. A person, she was the best translator I ever had. She could actually imitate Bright Star and the sounds of the spirits. She had some kind of musical ear. She could actually channel what she heard come out of my mouth. It came out of hers very much like it. It's like a mimic.
You're in a group setting. You say some Bright Star speaks.
Yeah.
I guess pauses. Translate.
Not much of a pause. It was almost like bing, 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 like that.
When you were in your travels as a channel and you were encountering these different cultures, here you are, this boy from Northern California playing his bass, and did you have a moment where you were sitting there in this incredible experience, really, upon reflection, it's quite incredible, and say to yourself, how did this all happen? Am I really doing this? Was there a moment of, you never pictured this happening? I
think that's an ongoing thing, and as an older man, I look back over my life and find it even more miraculous, actually, than I did at the time. At the time, I was just kind of a go-with-the-flow guy. Where the wind blew, I went. I didn't believe that things were impossible. I believed less that things were possible than things were impossible. Strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
To believe more in the impossible than the possible. Because I think there was always a little bit of the cynic in me. There was always a little bit, show me. It's like Harry Truman, I'm from Missouri, show me. I want to see it. I want to know it. So I can't say that it was negative. I just really needed to have evidence. I was a big evidence freak.
Did that kind of set you apart from the larger sort of New Age community? Because as I've known you, you've tended to be a very private person.
Mm-hmm.
And
very.
That was really your path, and very much true to who you are, I think, as a human being.
Well, I think of myself as a private person.
Yes.
I like quiet. I like to go off and be still. Go, if you can find a quiet piece of Central Park, at least not on a holiday or a weekend, but I like to go and be quiet and listen to the birds talk. I like the sound of...
People have had to find you. It wasn't really what you wanted to create a big center and then really teach in that way.
No.
Which is fine if that's your truth.
Well, my truth is that having a big center means managing a lot of people, which I don't want to do. I've had to try to manage a housekeeper and another person who works for me. It's a big job managing others. I don't want to manage other people's lives. I have no interest in it whatsoever. In fact, I like to kind of crawl off into a quiet corner.
Yeah.
I never have time to read books. I've always got something challenging me from someplace. I've always got some forms to fill out or some damn thing. Just the basic maintenance of life. Or as one of my guys used to say, it's like Buddha said, you have to chop wood and fetch water every day. You got to get up You got to brush your teeth. You got to take a bath. You got to get to da. You got to get your breakfast. There's a lot of that stuff. Mediums are not exempted from that. We don't have little fairies coming down from the sky or handing us breakfast.
Well, maybe. They're giving you medical advice. They're showing you.
Well, they are giving me medical advice. They are giving me medical advice. They're sending me to the right people. But
when you have been traveling the world again, these experiences, what was the strangest? Well, I'm sure there's plenty of strange experiences. What sticks out in your mind is, wow, there's something here maybe a world that I don't even know about that's much bigger or stranger.
Well, I was not really that way, but I've called them rescues. Okay, so I'll give you two examples. I arrived in Tokyo Airport with a Peruvian friend who didn't need a visa, but I did and didn't know it. So when I asked her, should get your visa, she said, we don't need visas. We, meaning she and other Peruvians, not me. So there I arrived, and I got these two guys that look like, sumo wrestlers come over and say, you have to leave. I said, leave. He said, you have no visa, you can't come in. Well, that's a heart-stopping moment, right? So I think, I felt like I needed to be very quiet, very calm, and very nice. I said, well, this was not told me. This is not information that was given to me by the Japanese embassy or anything. So anyway, I made this little story. And they realized that I was sincere. And I said, I have all these reservations and things, and, we're supposed to stay in these hotels and so forth. So I was there to spend some money in Japan. So I say, you come with us. We take you to the prefect of the airport. Well, the prefect was this little old guy. He goes, why are you here without visa? I said, I must be a stupid American. I didn't realize that. So I says, well, you make a big mistake. You have to write apology to the emperor. I said, oh, great. Now I'm going to write an apology to the emperor in Japanese, right? Cool. I thought, what is this?
Really?
He takes out a piece of paper. It's all written in English. Apology to the Emperor of Japan for not coming with a visa or whatever the hell it was. He says, how long you want to stay? I said, well, we were hoping to stay for 10 days. Okay, 2 weeks. That's out. Wow. So we stayed for 2 weeks.
What, you really had to do this? I've never heard of such a thing.
I never heard of it either. We used to get cars to take us, a friend of mine, Elsie, we used to get cars in Peru. We used to pick up a guy who had a car, and he'd drive us to the next town, and we'd pay him, and then we'd pick up another guy who'd take us to the next place. It was kind of that way around. So we got to this place in India. And no, I'm sorry. This was not India. This was Thailand. We had other issues in India, but Thailand. When I left India, the man says, how do you like India? I said, oh, I loved India. He says, oh, yes, easy to love, hard to like. I remember that. That was one of my favorites. No, India was a whole other experience. And that was remarkable.
When you're in these places, did you ever have these reincarnation experiences?
Oh, everywhere.
Where did you feel it?
Oh, very much. I felt like I knew India and spaces. Certain parts of India, much more. Mysore was one of them.
When you have these recollections, or how do they come when you see a past life for yourself, or how do you see it? Then how do you see it for another person? How does it come to you?
It's a context. For instance, I ate Indian food only for the entire time that I was in India, and I wanted nothing else but. I didn't want anything remotely American food. And I loved every minute of it. I mean, I just like Indian food. I like Indian people. If it wasn't for these transport issues that stuff up. But I rode on an elephant. We went up to the mountains to this famous place.
I would love to hear your thoughts on animal communication.
Animal communication, I have one standing one. I have crows that nest in the water tower of the building south of me. And they know I live here. And they'll come by and they go, rock, 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 rock. Every time I see a crow, crows like me. They come over to me.
They are in a sense, in Native American tradition.
Yes.
Interdimensional, they symbolize the space between life and death.
Exactly.
So do you get also messages? Have people asked you, can you tell me what my dog is thinking? Can you tell me what my cat is thinking?
Not normally.
No.
Not normally, because we don't normally think in the same thought patterns as dogs or cats. I know the nature of cats. I had cats for years, and I know what cats are like. Cats have a different sense of relationships to humans than dogs do. Dogs are really protectors and play pals of their owners. And they get very lonely if you leave them alone. Cats are very happy to live alone for a while. They don't mind if you take off for a few minutes. Cats are very nocturnal, and so while you're sleeping, they're up doing stuff in the apartment.
Do you feel they have more of a psychic connection, considering the Egyptians regard them as that way, and then how they were popularized through pagan or Wicca, or the idea of a modern witch? With cats, what is this mythology around cats?
Well, cats definitely have association with psychic things. They're much more alert to it. They're very alert. They'll just wake up. They will do something. And I have to understand how cats served, especially for Siamese cats and cats of South Asian cats, were used as guardians in the house. And they would sit on the highest piece of furniture and wait for anybody that it was an intruder and jump off and just plunge their claws into the back. There's an old saying, get that cat off my back. And they were guard cats. And then the person would start screaming, and everybody wake up and come and realize that there's a burglar in the house. They like to climb. Cats are very more maternal in nature as a group. And I include male cats as well. I mean, they're very maternal. My parents had in the early days, just after I was born, I was on a ranch for a while. There was a barn cat they kept to get rid of the rats and so forth. And one divine day, she came marching out of the barn with 6 baby skunks following her behind her. And she had adopted these skunks because the mother had been killed, probably roadkill or something in the middle of the night. There were no lights on the roads in those days. And so I find that cats are very quick to adopt those they like. I saw a lot of animals do this. They are very adoptive if they like you. I've seen lions adopt. There's been some interesting films on lions which did not normally eat a particular creature on the menu, their menu. So find one that's fallen down out of a tree or something, and they come over, pick it up, and they try to nurse it or something. Cats are very incredible creatures.
Yeah.
They're the oldest mammals in the world that are alive today. The oldest.
Really?
Yes, they predate dogs. Dogs are descended from wolves, but cats are descended from, I don't know what the original ancestors were. But they when Africa and South America separated at a certain point, they traveled over that separation, and they've traveled up and down. We have cats in on every continent.
Is there an animal that you think communicates psychically to us more than others? People feel this connection with horses, and they're horse whisperers, and
yeah, but mine is birds.
Okay.
Birds, the old saying, a little bird told me.
Yes.
I have birds that will come over to me, and they will act in a very excited way if they want me to go follow them. And they will talk. In the world of crows, the largest of that family is a raven. The crow is the intermediary size, and the smallest one is called a starling. These are a shiny blackbird, and every one of them can talk and sing not quite like canaries, but they can mimic sounds. And one of my favorite stories about that was that Mozart was so poor and living in a basement or something like that. His wife took his children. He had 2 sons, took them off to her family, and left him there alone. And he was absolutely, at that point, partially alcoholic because he had no money to pay for heat. And he picked up this little starling in the market, and he would hum some of his music as he was in the house or whatever it was, and the bird would start to sing it back to him. And the bird apparently learned to speak German.
So these birds are the symbol of communication, as we know.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Tesla, I find an interesting one. Nikola Tesla, I was fond of pigeons. And he used to go out and collect them at night off the street and take them into wherever he was living. And he had bunches and bunches of pigeons running around. There's a great affinity for creative people around birds. So what I was going to say, when I'm around crows, if I'm outdoors, they will fly overhead and they will like do these little aerial acrobatics for me. They're real hams. They love to be paid attention to. Birds like a lot of attention.
It's like they know you. There's some knowing.
Yeah.
They must recognize.
Well,
I think they see energy, auras. What is it?
I think first of all, I'm sure I was an animal in several lifetimes. One of my one thing that I was born afraid of were spiders. Nothing else. Spiders. So, and as a kid, they used to call me Buzzy Bee because I was always buzzing around and doing something. And, I was always a busy Aries. But I had to find out, what is this thing with spiders? So I did this meditation. I knew that you could go back into past lives and everything else. So, next thing I know, I'm wrapped in spider silk, and the spider's about to come to have me for dinner. And the spider, little bee, spider about that big, all the arachnophobia is very common. A lot of people, they make movies about spider monsters that come and eat people. Why? Because it's one of the most common phobias. It comes from a past life of having been eaten by a spider. After I had this kind of scream out, shocking. It's interesting, you don't remember pain a lot, but you remember events. I suddenly became interested in spiders. In fact, I realized that humans learned how to make fishing nets with spider webs. So we learn from insects. We also, some insects can be very deadly, like certain reptiles and so forth.
So do animals have, what is the soul? It's not I've heard, and I believe it was Jane Roberts when she channeled Seth, and Seth had channeled that they're fragment souls, or it's not the complete soul, it's a piece of consciousness. What are your thoughts on those?
Hey, it's very simple. I have about 20 people who live inside of me who are always having arguments. I mean, I have so many pieces to my soul. I'm a patchwork quilt of soul.
Because we do see animals that you might say act with a bigger personality, or have more, in a sense, more, they want to interact with humans, and they look at you, they'll tilt their head, as opposed to another animal who just seems to be not interested.
Well, there's dumb animals and smart ones.